to a life, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I'll rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello, hello, and hello. Happy Thursday to you guys. Thursdays are like a throwback day. Days that take you back to the past and allow you to kind of bask in some of your glory days, right? Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. First and foremost, I would like to welcome you guys here, especially those people who are watching this show for the first time. So I'm Dr. Jefferson, and this is Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson, where we talk about accountability and also demystify and destigmatize getting mental help via seeing a psychotherapist, psychiatrist, or psychologist, whatever you choose. Goodness, I just want you guys to know that it's really important to keep yourself balanced, to find balance if you don't have balance, and to validate some areas that you may feel you have concerns. I know you guys have probably had a chance to kind of look through the content or the areas of the description. And this is going to be a really heavy conversation today. Oftentimes, I like to talk to people about being gentle with themselves, being permissive with themselves, and finding the strength to be resilient. Right? Today's show, we have a very special feature for our primary accountability corner. And I know that it's going to be one that's very, very sensitive to a lot of people out there in the Black community, especially people in the age realm of about 25 to about 40. Because we're going to talk about some very disturbing news reports and allegations that affect the way that we look at the community in general. So I'm going to pull up these banners really quickly. And of course, this is the first one that I want to kind of talk about, because I feel like when we're out there and we're looking for apologies, or so we say, we don't realize that there is something deeper. There is something more that we need, that we actually need. Have you ever been in an argument with someone where that person said something and the statement or the words that they used when they said the thing they said just cut you deeper than a sword may have, or than a knife may have, you know, and you just had a really hard time just with sitting with it. And maybe you didn't even feel valid in the space where you said, you know what, I don't think I want to deal with this person anymore. Because the first time that you heard those words, these were words that were almost foreign to you. And you just knew that there was ill intent behind them. Could have been your trauma bonding experience that you had shared with them. It could have been something that they knew was a very sensitive area to you. And we talked yesterday about when we are our truth responses, right? So when we're triggered to respond with hostility because somebody else is speaking our truth before we're ready to release that into the atmosphere. So oftentimes when we dissociate or we pull back from those people who are either toxic in the moment or those people that we've identified are simply not, they're not life goals, right? So we say to ourselves, you know what? I don't need an apology. No, I don't need that. I just need to completely detach myself from them. And then we go and we find some type of recourse in detaching ourselves, right? However, we never feel better. We never feel better. We still have the same amount of frustration. We still have the same amount of sadness. We're still upset, and we go back on the endorsement that we need an apology, and we go back on that and we have conversations with the people around them, but we never have a direct conversation with the person. Because by having a conversation with that person, that means that we are now broken, lesser than, weak, right? Just owning those feelings display some sign of weakness. And we don't want to convey a message to anybody outside of ourselves that says that we are weak as people. Okay. And the largest thing is we don't want to make it about us. I'm here to let you guys know that oftentimes we say we need an apology. We come back and circle around even after we say we don't. But the truth is we never did need an apology. We needed to heal through. We needed to understand exactly what that message was intended, or how that message was intended, and exactly what they meant to convey when they did convey the message that they conveyed. So that kind of boils down to understanding our personality type / or our language of affection and the incongruence that see those types of interactions. So I know you guys have probably heard people talk about love languages, right? And typically they're just scratching the surface. It's just the surface stuff. We don't really go deep into it and give you exactly what you need. But we do have some conversations around it. And you've heard lots of people mention love languages and the importance of love languages in relationships where you're having success in connecting with your partner. However, the way that we convey love, that's affection, congruence. The way that we convey love also has a lot to do with the way that we convey messages in general, or the way that we speak or move with other people. Because, of course, we're attached to larger systems. So if our personality type is anxious and avoidant, okay, that means that you tend to get very nervous. And especially when it comes to situations where you're going to be isolated with that person by yourself, right? Just you and them. So that means that's a forced, comfortable silence that over time you feel obligated to developing, right? And you feel like, you know what? The negative thoughts part. I might not ever be able to get there. If I don't get there, then I may not be able to maintain the relationship with this person, because I won't know how to be with them in spaces or in times where there's nothing for us to actually discuss, right? And you become avoidant as kind of like one of the side effects, right? So you don't want to go around them, but at the same time, you definitely need them around you. So what happens is you start to pull further and further from the relationship, not knowing that you've identified yourself and your self-importance with that person, directly connected to that person. So not associated with that person, not that person's adding value to you, not you're adding value to them, but your existence is now contingent upon them. Okay? And their approval. So the key to preventing this type of incongruence, which is anxious avoidant, and maybe a very secure attached person, right? The way that we avoid that is by becoming extremely selfish, right? So I want to know if you guys have ever met someone and the first thing that you said to yourself was, oh, that person's so selfish. It's always about them. And then I want you to go back to what I said about us being permissive with self and not allowing ourselves to think it's okay for us to make it about us, right? So if you know a person who is selfish, what you know for sure, right, is that those people who are selfish are not going to let you do certain things. They're just not. You may call them controlling. You may call them a lot of things. But I want you guys who are watching to type in the chat, one, if you know someone who's really selfish and you've made that assessment of them. And two, I want you to tell me, what do they look like? So what do their selfish components or selfish characteristics look like? Because essentially there is a difference with between a person who is selfish and a person who is self-centered or self-absorbed. Okay? So people who are selfish, those people have healthy boundaries, right? So some people in life have healthy boundaries, and then you have other people in life who have no boundaries at all, and their personality and their presence and their spiritual energy is very permeable. Anybody can get through that. Okay. The problem is, if we are not selfish, we can't be our best version of ourselves for anyone. So if we're connected to someone else, then how can we actively engage and contribute to the fabric of their being, the core of their being, whatever they have going on, if we're not taking care of us first? And I know, like, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know what, God first. So the best way that I put this to people who are deeply religious, not spiritualists, because that's a whole different understanding, but for people who are religious and trying to make sense of that piece, is the book that you read and you call law, that Bible, says that God made people in his own image. Okay? So if God made man in his image, that means man is a direct reflection of God. Maybe you're trying to access the internal component of your higher power or your God or your Buddha or whomever within you. So that means you have to prioritize you first still. There's no getting around it. Oftentimes, people who look at the idea of people who say they're a free spirit, they think of these people as boundless. And they're like, you know what? They have no boundaries. They just go wherever the wind flow, right? On the contrary, people who are free spirits are more in control of self than most other human beings, because they don't let external factors intrude on that emotional center where they maintain their core understandings of who they are. Okay? So, and this is important for a couple of reasons. If you think about it, if a person has ever tried to force you to do something, or if a person has ever tried to guilt trip you into not doing a particular thing, I'm sure that at that point you felt some type of internal resistance, right? Internal sense of resistance. Like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to let them take my shine. I'm not going to let them make this all about them. I'm not going to let them do this. I'm not going to let them do that. But eventually you probably gave in, because it's very possible to give in to those people that we weigh as essential to the fabric of our being. Okay? So I like people to be permissive with themselves. Give yourself the grace that you would give your child when you make, decisions that lead to you doing things that you don't feel like is conducive of your overall gain. Okay? And so understanding a free spirit a little bit better, if you are a free spirit, if you are, navigating towards becoming more free spirited, you trust your internal center because you understand that that is your spirit. It's guiding you. And it's in its guidance. You trust that the answers that you need to be unveiled over the course of your life experiences will be unveiled through experience. But you have to give yourself permission to explore life, okay? And kind of go with the flow, if you will. But you do have to start off with very, very pragmatic boundaries. The boundaries have to make sense. You can't just say, you know what, I'm not going to engage in listening to music because music is the devil. There is a music in everything that we do, right? Even the wind houses music and sounds. And so understanding that your boundaries need to make sense. They have to be pragmatic to your end game, basically. So that you can avoid being permeable or a person without boundaries. Because what will happen is over time, you will age yourself. Your spirit will age itself. Your mind will age itself. Your body will age itself. So you will look a lot older before you ever reach that peak of life because you've allowed stress. You've allowed intrusion. You've allowed other people's energy, negative soul ties through sexually risky interactions and things like that. You've allowed that stuff to disturb your spirit as it rested, as it became. Okay. And so there is a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it is an amazing book about trauma. It helps people to understand it, especially lay people that are not clinicians. It really outlines the way that your weight gain, your physical body aches or somatic experiencing, we talk about that. The physical deterioration of your bones, muscle mass, and things like that, illness and infection and things like that. It talks about the way that your brain responds to traumatic experiences. Excuse me. And then as a result of you becoming depressed, your brain doesn't produce the amount of feel good norepinephrine type of chemicals that are required for you to remain balanced, to be able to combat pain naturally and things like that. So it does not function at its full capacity. So your body will maintain the trauma, both physical and otherwise. And what will happen is you will age. You will. I mean, in a tremendous way. The worst thing is this. When it comes time for you to finally hold yourself or other people accountable, you will feel bad. And in feeling bad, you will become depressed that first time that you stand up. Because for you, you're not ready to come, up front, face to face with some of those truths. And you feel like you have turned your back on your community. You feel like you've turned your back on yourself. You feel like you've become a person that you knew was not necessarily accepted by society. In the Black community, there is something called no snitching, or snitches get stitches and things like that, right? And to be honest, I think it's kind of spiraled into so many other communities as well. And the idea is to not tell on people who are a part of an experience that you were equally a part of. And we've taken that so far out of context that it affects our healthy becoming as we move through the phases of development of life emotionally. So we've normalized these traumas. If we see someone in a very difficult spot, if we see someone physically being harmed, if we see someone sexually molested, or we hear about it, if we hear that molestation happened at the hands of one of our Black men, I talked about that yesterday, we feel like we have to negate the authority within ourselves to hold those people accountable and instead move into a position to protect them, because it's necessary in order for us to maintain this facade of perfection in some way in comparison with other subcultures. So before we get to that, Now we're going to talk about the focus of the conversation today. Okay. So this is our accountability corner. You guys know that I'm here for accountability 100%, regardless of who's the target of that said accountability. It's about understanding what's happening and how that affects us as people who identify with Black and Brown communities. Okay. So rapper T.I. and Tiny, official names Clifford and Tamika Harris, have broken ties with some of their very close and intimate friends recently. Specifically, there is a scenario mentioned by Tamika's best friend, Sabrina, or one of her best friends, in which Tamika was in the hospital giving birth to a stillborn or having a miscarriage, right? And there was a party for one of their children together that still needed to take place. And so Sabrina stepped in and she was going to go ahead and throw the party, and T.I. wasn't there. And they had an assistant at the time. And that assistant was sent to go to the store to get something and bring it back by T.I. Sabrina had no knowledge of this. So while she was setting up at the house, the assistant bought these things by, okay, from the grocery store. This is before any kids or anything were on the scene at the party, any of that. Allegedly, at some point, Sabrina and the assistant exchanged words. The words turned to a physical fight, and the fight was over for a while, for some time. And then by the time that, excuse me, things were getting back together and they were, preparing to receive the kids, a couple of kids are being dropped off and things like that, T.I. arrives at the house and storms up the stairs and starts yelling obscenities, and I did tell you guys that viewer discretion is advised for this content. So he was yelling, where that bitch at, where that hoe at, something like that. And at some point, he made it up the stairs where she was sitting, and Sabrina is who I'm talking about. And he pulled his gun out and put it to her head. Okay. At which point he said, bitch, I'll kill you. So a couple of things here. This was just 2017. It was in December of 2017. I'm thinking, if I'm correct. Okay. We're just in the mid phases of 2021 now. Okay. As a result of this particular conversation, right? But exchange, should I say, not the conversation. Because of course, at this point, she says some things to him. He says some things to her. They exchange words and he's hyping himself up saying, oh, you don't believe I'll do it, blah, blah, blah. Cocks the gun. For whatever reason, Sabrina felt like she didn't have to say anything about what happened between the two of them. When she was asked why it is she didn't call the police in that immediate space, she mentioned that she had some illegal substances on the premises. She was in the cannabis industry. Okay. Boy. And although this is something that she was in the process of trying to pursue legally, at the time it was illegal in Georgia, of course, and it still is. But what I do not understand is this. We will prioritize the possibility of something else being discovered over our physical safety and bookkeeping of that. So let's say you have to go to jail. Like, if you have to go to jail, at least you're physically safe. At least you're protected from someone, acting out against you, right? Tamika is still in the hospital. Many people have asked the question directly to Sabrina, like, why would this man who has a wife who's in the hospital, right? I said this was 2017. They were married in 2010, been together since 2001. So why would a man who is married, who has a wife, being given medical, services and stuff like that rendered to her in the hospital, and she is your best friend, and you end up in a fight with the assistant of him, why would he come to the house now after the fight has long abated and put a gun to your head and threaten to kill you? So she has said several times, but her body language definitely says something different when people are asking, was he seeing this assistant? Was he having an affair on his wife at the time? Is this what you were talking about? Because she said that during that space, she said a lot of things about him being the cause of Tiny having this miscarriage, and he'd been cheating on her for some time. So she was asked directly whether or not T.I. was having an affair with this woman. She wouldn't answer it. She kept saying, well, I don't know because I wasn't there. I'm not there. Not there. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Who knows? Not my business. So let's fast forward. She decides that as a result of this happening, and, after Tiny came from the hospital, because of course she went ahead and had the child's party that day. After Tiny came out of the hospital and made her statement that, oh, okay, he shouldn't have done that. Oh, that was so wrong, blah, blah, blah. And had her make a song with her about the different women that he had cheated on her with over the course of that year, because it was a different one every month or something to that extent. Ladies, at this point in the conversation, I'm going to pause to let you guys know, please avoid toxic behavior. If your friends are in a relationship with a man and she knows that that man is cheating, but like I said, she's in a relationship with that man, okay? Mind your business. Mind your business. Don't ever allow that friend to impede on your personal space, and don't ever allow yourself to remove your permission to say, this ain't for me. I'm not doing that. Can't help you with that, sis. There are certain things we have to do to protect our peace. Okay? Just our peace. And that's not even to play towards the realities that have now come about for this woman, Sabrina. She now has like a bounty on her head, allegedly. Like, what in the world? Like, her character has been completely defamed. And there are certain things that, in hindsight, she's looking back on and recognizing that these people have done things to people, traumatized various people in various spaces. And, now things are moving along. She's finding more and more victims. Because in reality, she only spoke out because she was speaking out and marching against Atlanta's city mayor, Keisha Lance Bottom. And as a result of her speaking out against her, T.I. kind of went direct head in the media against her, and continue to support Keisha Lance Bottom because of the things that she's done for the music industry. It's kind of like a don't bite the hand that feeds you thing. And I talked about that already on another video. But I am here for accountability for these many women who have spoken out, and men who have spoken out and said that they have been drugged and sexually assaulted by this couple during this time. Hey, Casey, what's going on? Help me just understand, what is it about us in the Black community that creates this climate of normalizing traumatic experiences in our community for the sake of protecting something that isn't even there, which is reputation. You guys gotta excuse me. My allergies are really acting up today. But yeah, I just it is so hard. It is so hard. Like if T.I. is 40 years old. Okay. At any rate, there are legal disputes in the process now, but people are saying that these are things that happened to them with this couple from around the time when they first got together, all the way leading up to recent years, okay, but pre-COVID. So I think we need to talk about accountability. Do you guys feel like Sabrina should have decided to say something about what happened between her and T.I.? Do you feel like she should have called the police on that day? Do you feel like she should not have? Like, what are your thoughts around the situation that happened specifically between T.I. and Sabrina after that fight subsided between Sabrina and the assistant for a while, and then he comes in and he's like, bitch, I'll kill you. You know. Now, let's talk about what rape is. As you guys, and feel free to continue to answer the questions. You can answer the questions in the comments. And you guys can answer this question too. Because a lot of people think that there is a difference between statutory rape, and they say that the difference between that statutory rape is consent. And we're going to talk about consent too. But the two kind of play hand in hand. Okay. So rape is any sexual act that a person engages with another person or people that's not consensual. Okay. So if we move on and we say, what is consent, right? If we need to understand consent, we need to understand that in order for anybody to consent to sex, okay, and I need you guys to hear me because I know a lot of people got a lot of kids out there, teenagers, okay? And you guys will even say, yeah, I know that he or she is sexually active, but they're being safe. Let's talk about what consent is. You have to be a consenting adult. So you cannot consent if you're under 18 and not adjudicated. Okay? So for you guys trying to figure out what the adjudication means, that piece, that means that person has now been, considered an adult or responsible legally for themselves as their own guardian before the ages of 18. Typically kids are like, very mature between the ages of 14 and 18 that get this done through court, but they have to go to magistrate court to get it done. And the kids have to do that. They have to file the motion. So statutory rape is still rape just because the person who's involved in the act can't consent. And that does go both ways. So they're both raping each other, molesting each other, all that good stuff. However you want to look at it. But that's just what it is. So sexual assault happens in what do they say? 73 to 74% of crimes reported in regard to assault charges. That's a lot, y'all. And then we also have to consider the fact that a lot of times it doesn't go reported at all. These people who are now making these allegations against this couple, and I think they dismissed the charges because they're outside of the statute of limitations in those areas, because it was in California and Nevada. So I know one of them doesn't have, I know one of them has a 7-year statute. But these crimes were committed against these people 10 years ago. I know for one. So, and you got more and more people coming out saying, yeah, they did this to me. Whenever you, oh, let's talk about consent for adults before I say that. But adults cannot consent if they are not of sound mind and body. So they can't consent if they're under pressure physically. So that means you're holding a gun or a knife or other physically body threatened physical body harm to that person, right? Even emotional. So if you're coercing them into having that sexual experience with you, and it's kind of like a lot of people around and it makes it pressure, and they're like, well, you know, we're at this sex party. I didn't come to this sex party to just watch. Like, he's right. Like, he says, oh no, everybody else is getting naked, you're supposed to get naked too. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't be standing over here with all your clothes on watching everybody else have sex, right? That's still pressure. Okay, so even if people engage in that particular setting, it's still rape because you pressured them by peer pressure. I know it's strange, but it's a thing. Okay, it's still peer pressure. So you pressured them into engaging in the sexual act. Therefore, the consent is no longer valid. Okay, the other component is forcible rape. And forcible rape can be a couple of different ways. It could be by using illicit substances. Bill Cosby locked up, y'all. That wasn't like a wake up call. I you know what I mean? Oftentimes I say to Black America, I know that you have this thing, you know, you feel more uninhibited. You know what I mean? When you smoke weed, get high. But please understand that it does lead to an altered mental state. And if anything leads to an altered mental state, then if you engage in sex with that person in any way, that person can file rape charges against you. I need you guys to really understand this. Even if they voluntarily consume the substance, it's a thing. It's a thing. You're going to jail. You're going to jail. All they need to do is say it happened. That's it. They're not able to consent if they have now an altered mental state as a result of doing drugs. So doesn't matter if it's pills, weed, heroin, shooting up, whatever. They cannot consent. So I think that you guys need to be very careful in the way that you gauge this thing, okay? Because I know that a lot of young people like to, you know, pop pills, do X and stuff like that, and do a little weed and things like that so they could get things started, the party going. Don't. Just don't. Just don't. So you have this couple that has struggled the entirety of their existence being together. They've struggled to be faithful with one another, towards one another, and all of that stuff. They've struggled to respect one another and all of that stuff. And now they have to go through this together. They've lost a baby because of all of this stress. And now they're having to go through this. Please understand, I'm not making an excuse for them. I'm not excusing their actions or anything like that, but it is what it is. You got to be more careful. You have to know what the laws are, and you have to know, you got to know the outcomes of your actions, people. You said there is a lot of women falsely accusing men for falsely, wait. A lot of women falsely accuse men, okay, for falsely accusing a man of raping them. And nothing has happened. Is that what you mean? Nothing happened to them. Yes and no. You heard the spiel that I just gave. If there are drugs involved, then it's rape, period. It's not possible. not even a possible. It's not even possible. It's a definite. And that's the thing, because oftentimes people don't know the law. They say, you know what? No, she was a consenting adult, and I'm a consenting adult. We did what it is that we wanted to do. Hey, Anti-Afro, how are you? Oh, no, you're fine. But so it doesn't matter if you want to do it, okay? The thing is, there are certain drugs, certain illicit substances, right? You can call it herbs, whatever you want to call it, but certain illicit substances that contribute to a high level of euphoria, okay? And as a result of the high level of euphoria, you want to do a lot of things. You might want to go jump out of a whole plane, off of a whole hill, free diving into death. But would you know what I mean? Would you want your parents, your family, your friends to protect you from doing that thing? Or would you want them to let you just go and roam and jump? So Black Anonymous says, hello, are you saying that women who falsely accused should be charged? I think they are, actually. There is a certain thing that is called, they charge them for filing a false police report. Because I had a client who one time had that same said issue, because she made the complaint and redacted her complaint because it was against her husband, who was very much a narcissistic personality disorder person. And when she redacted her complaint, they locked her up because she refused to press charges because they had all the evidence. To include the rape kit, slits, physical damage, black eye, all that. So the reality is this: we have to be accountable for not fully understanding the consent component. If we fully understood the consent component, because that's the answer, you guys, that's the solution. The problem is a lack of accountability. The problem is a lack of information and insight, a lack of direction, a lack of education altogether. T.I. and Tiny could have avoided being in this position. They could have avoided, the public ridicule, all of that. You said she was locked up for refusing to cooperate or a false report. No, the false report. So they could have locked her up for refusing to cooperate if the state brought the charges against him for the rape. Okay. But her complaint, she filed a police report after he assaulted her, both sexually and physically. And she was in a hospital, right? They sent her there to get the rape kit done. So once the rape kit confirmed that, yes, definitely, this is definitely rape, scraped his skin samples from under her fingernails and things like that. They had all of their evidence. And then he came and got her out, bonded her out of jail. And then she came right back in there 3 hours later, recanted the story and said that she lied. So that's how they determined it was false, because she said, I lied. I'm sorry. I lied. None of these things that I said happened. I did this to myself, and I want to remove my complaint against him. You said Brian Banks accused is not doing any time. Getting locked up as a rapper is life sentence in prison because the inmates look down on rapists. I don't think. Have we heard of the Brian Banks situation? No. Nope.
He misaccused him.
Hold on, go back so I can look at it. Oh, Brian Banks is the accuser. So yeah, I've not covered that one. But those charges also have to be filed by the police department. So they file the report, and then they take it to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor or solicitor general is the person responsible for actually prosecuting and, going against that person that, oh, recanting is definitely common. However, when you've gone through and you've wasted the resources of the police department, and they have everything to pursue this criminal case, but they're pursuing this criminal case on your behalf, and then you go back and you tell them that you lied, not I was confused, not I just don't remember who did it, not to mention they already had DNA, but I made this up. I did this to myself. Yes, they will lock you up for filing a police report, a false police, and they knew it. Like, they knew that she was lying. That's what was so discouraging for me, and that was one of the reasons they called me in and they referred her to me, because they were like, you deal with people that have sexual trauma, but Doc, help me understand this, help me figure this out. Like, what is this? Like, look at this evidence. We know that she was raped. Like, what is going on here? I was like, well, victim shaming happens. It's a thing, excuse me. And I went down that whole explanation. She went back with him. She didn't even go home. It only took him to get her outside to the car. So I do agree with that, but the criminal protective orders are not often issued. And about 9 times out of 10, they don't. Because the victim does not. So let me talk a little bit about what leads to them doing that. So if the victim comes in and they are fearful, right? And they say, you know what? My husband is violent. He's been violent for X amount of years. And as a result of his repeated cycles of violence, I just feel like XYZ, right? In those cases, they'll have a secondary agency step in, and we do all of the protective orders and all that stuff. We do all the paperwork, take the pictures, submit it, to the courts to get the temporary restraining order approved. And then we also provide shelter for them prior to going to court, where they get they're going to get the continuation of the protective order. And that's just a process, right? Until they finish their rape case, they will always have an additional protective order. Oftentimes those protective orders extend out past a year. Some of them 10 and 12 years. I remember when I was single, and I dated this one guy, and he was just like, yeah, my baby mama, she's just crazy. I know you're the type that runs background checks and stuff like that, because I saw the file and everything like that, because I brought it to the table. I did. He was like, and I know that's what you were asking me for my signature for, and blah, blah, blah. He was like, so I know you found the protective order. He had a continued protective order for 12 years. 12 years. You're going back. The first 2 times he had gone back, it was 6-month intervals. Okay. He went back again every year after that, and the judge continued it every year after that. And then it got to the point, I think at the 5-year marker, they gave her another 5 years. And we're talking about a court system that really understands attachment trauma when it comes to kids being away from their fathers, right? And they know, obviously, you want to facilitate space for the father to be able to visit with the daughter, but the mom is a component to that, right? So they had to order a secondary person to supervise visitation during the time that he had the restraining order. And he still had it active at the moment on the dates. No, this is it, sir. Your baby mama's not crazy. You don't think when I looked at it, I looked at the whole transcript of the. Just stop. Right. So the difference is in that situation, and even in California, right? The difference is in that situation, the the cops are called out to the scene. So that's the difference in the state pursuing charges on your part and you walking into a police station, excuse me, and filing the report. And then them transferring you from the police station to the hospital for a medical examination. What do you mean? What, the restraining orders? Sure, they can be, but they weren't. They were stiffer every time he went back to court. Um, and it was rough. He was an economist. And he was something. And I mean, he was a big guy. What can I say? You know, he was tall, very, very built, you know, and there was a lot of, they had a very thick file. I'm just going to put it like that. You said you really need to do an entire show just on this. Many people aren't clear. Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I may have talked about this a while back. I think it was last year when I covered sexual assault and accountability. Excuse me. But I didn't talk about this particular case because it wasn't relevant then, because it hadn't surfaced yet. But this one is a serious one for us as a community. You know, you got a lot of people here in Atlanta. They're like, well, you know what? I'm standing behind T.I. and Tiny because that's my favorite rapper. Those women wanted it. You know, people get high all the time. That's the culture of substance users. There are so many things I have heard from the mouths of Black people as to how the victims are the problem. I've not heard too many people that said, you know what? They're wrong. They need to take accountability. They need to go to jail. They need to pay restitution, whatever it is that happens. They need to be prosecuted, right? I've not heard that. So even though they've denied the allegations, you got way too many witnesses to the behavior. Okay. And then I heard there was some social media video on Snapchat at some point, somebody screen recorded. Death of the internet, people. It's all just frustrating for me. It is. It's just for several reasons it's frustrating for me. Sabrina says in her statement, I never knew the extent to which they were taking these things, but I have been there several times where they have told people to take the pills, pop the pills, because we would all pop the pills and get high together after leaving the gentleman's club or whatever. And he would ask for everybody to show their tongues if they were known to spit it out, and she was one of those people. I just need us to be more accountable. I heard a lot of people when the Kobe Bryant situation unfolded. There were a lot of people, a lot of males who were saying, well, whoa, wait, she was in his room. They were engaged in sex. How were they engaged in sex if she didn't want it? And then she gonna change her mind? So what is rape? We're gonna go back to it. At any point when a woman says no, at any point when a woman does not say yes, at any point when a woman is not over the age of 18 and without being under the influence of substances at all, there is no consent. and therefore it is rape. So if you're in the middle of sex with a woman, even if she's your wife, girlfriend, bestie, whomever, and you hear her say, "Oh, no, I don't want to do this," or "No, get off of me." If you continue to go, even one more pump, if you know, because that's the thing that gets me oftentimes, that's what I hear. Like, all I need is one more pump to just finish out. It's rape. That's what it is. Does that suck? For somebody, I'm sure. You know, you might walk around with blue balls or something, but that's none of her business. If a woman no longer wants to engage in sex with you, you have to get off of her. You have to stop, period. If a man no longer wants to engage in sex with you, you have to stop. You have to get off of him if you're on top of him. You have to remove yourself from the physical act of sex with him, period. Men do get raped too. They do. They do. And there is a man claiming these same allegations. I think the guy is in Vegas and the woman's in California. I can't remember, but against these two. You said, I mean, a show on criminal protective orders, criminal court issues. Oh, yeah. Versus restraining orders issued in civil court, and even how both differ from the military restraining orders. Definitely. Not only military restraining orders, but federal grade restraining orders, because the same thing applies for federal agents, secret services, and stuff like that. We're all under one conduit because we're all under the authority of UCMJ. But so, you guys, that is my show on accountability today. It is so depressing because it's difficult for even me to move into having this conversation, because I know that we have some norms as a part of our society, as a part of us, right? Being people who identify with the Black and brown community, that are not conducive to us adopting new and more rational responses to things like this happening, especially when we talk about in the Latinx community and the Latino community, because we're all melanated people, and also in Brazil and in Africa. We have got to do better. We have got to do better. More accountability, more conversations, more understanding, different behaviors, different outcomes are what we're trying to achieve here. Some of you have daughters, moms. How would you feel if that person were in the place of the person that you are assaulting? I don't know. Maybe that's a really good way to think about it. But then again, I've profiled cases sometimes where the mom is the reason they're out here raping everybody. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Put yourself in the victim's shoes in a way that you hold empathy for their position being underneath you as the person who is assaulting them. Sounds about right. So that's all I've got, you guys. As usual, I love you guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you've not already done so. Also, like and share the content. And I'll see you guys back tomorrow when we talk about our next personality disorder. Oh man, this was going to be a really good one. So make sure that you mark your calendar for tomorrow evening. I think it's at 8 p.m. Yep. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to talk about schizotypal personality disorder. I believe that's what it is. It's either that one or schizophreniform disorder. But so, yeah, it's schizotypal, because that's the one that's the personality disorder. That's what we're talking about. So I look forward to having that conversation with you guys. Thank you so much for following and sitting through this Very, very difficult conversation. You guys take care, make good choices, and be good to yourself and permissive to yourself when it comes to you saying no. And understand that it's okay to be selfish. You have to be selfish before you can be selfless. All right? Later days.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I'll rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. Phenomenon.